Okay. This is the patch 10.16 rundown. Before we get started, as always, this is subject to change. Today is Sunday. Monday we go in, we check the data, see some of the results of what's been going on. And, it might change. So definitely check the official patch notes on Tuesday. I'll also probably make a note of it on Twitter if anything changes between now and then. So, 10-15, we ended up in a pretty good spot. The meta's in a pretty good spot. There are a lot of builds. There's a lot of ways to play. Again, the way I define patch 10-15 is so close because there is a lot working, but just a few things that aren't. If we could get those in a perfect spot, we might have the perfect patch. So, with this patch, we took a little bit of a different approach. What you're going to see is there aren't as many balance changes, but we had 3 primary goals on top of the balance changes. So this looks like a big patch, even though we think the actual impact is that it's not that big. Because again, we are in a healthy spot and we don't want to change anything. And other fun fact is this is the patch that a lot of the Worlds competitions will be played on. I don't think it'll be the Worlds finals, but a lot of the qualifiers are getting played on this patch. So let's jump into it. So before we talk about our 3 goals, the first thing we added is, as always, a new galaxy. So we removed Star Cluster. Star Cluster is the oldest one that we felt like was ready to be removed. I know a lot of people are pining for Binary to be removed. We hear you, but Star Cluster was much older, ready to be removed. And the new galaxy is called Salvage World. This is probably the most advanced galaxy that we are going to add to the set. This one's a brain buster. When you have a item on a champion and you sell it, it breaks down into the components. This is going to be a difficult galaxy to parse what to do with. This changes a lot of things. For example, when you get an item off Kane or Carousel, you can break it apart into its components. Does that mean you finally don't lock all your items at 5-1? Does this mean Static Shiv goes up in value because it's good early and then you can break it apart? So yeah, there's a lot of really complex plays you can do with this. Very interesting to see how it plays out, but yeah, this is going to be a high skill cap galaxy. We'll see. So let us know what you think of it. Enjoy it. So, and as always, same as everything, every galaxy is 10%. There are 8 galaxies, and normal games are 20%. So nothing changed there. Cool. So we mentioned 3 goals. First goal is a silly goal, but it's still a goal. You know all those cool trace traits like 9 Rebel and 8 Star Guardian? Or 9 Star Guardian? They're not really that exciting to hit this set. You hit them and they're kind of bad. 8 Dark Star often loses to 6 Dark Star. So, goal number 1 was we're going to try to fix that. Battlecast 8 was okay. It wasn't great. Got a buff. So if you hit 8 Battlecast, big buff here. And again, 8 Battlecast is 2 spatulas and a 5-cost unit. Darkstar 8, 2 spatulas and a 5-cost unit. Gets a buff. Goes up to 48. Infiltrator 6. This is one that just we're paying a little bit for the price that it's only 1 spatula, it's only 6 units, so it doesn't get as big a buff. But Infiltrators are kind of weak when you're running 6 anyway, so this should be fine. Rebel 9. This is one of the hardest ones to hit because you're running 2 spatulas, level 9, and a legendary. So this gets a buff. And Star Guardian 9, same thing. You need 2 spatulas, you need a legendary, you need level 9. It gets a big buff. So if you can manage to hit these in a game, there should be pretty close to auto win. Not necessarily. Certainly not for Infiltrator 6. But these should be yes, I did it. Not, I'll kind of do it. So that's the first goal. Second goal. Right now in the game, there are a bunch of 3-star champions that you may as well never 3-star. You're just why bother? It's never worth the gold. I should be doing other things. So our goal here is to buff a lot of the 3-star champions so that you actually want to build them. The thing to note here is we're not trying to reinforce a hyper roll meta, so you're not going to see a ton of carries get buffed here. And missing is Bard 3. Yes, we know Bard 3 is going to be a problem. It's just not something we can do. So let's talk about these. Alawi 3. This is a buff to Battlecast reroll. This is probably, of all the changes, the most controversial one. But even in Battlecast reroll, Illaoi's not really doing a lot other than absorbing. So we wanted Illaoi to be able to live her fantasy of like stealing defenses. So a 3-star Illaoi gets to be pretty chunky. Leona, her damage reduction doubles. So like when a 3-star Leona puts that shield up, she's going to be tanky. Malphite, small buff, makes him a little chunkier. Poppy, and so this is the thing too, you'll see varying degrees of buff here, right? Like Poppy, this buff is like really minor. Does 25 damage and 50 shield bring Candyland back? Probably not, but it's a buff. Ziggs, 50 damage, very small buff. So yeah, Battlecast reroll looking strong with this change for sure. And if they decide to use this, should be good. But that's it for 1 costs. So yeah, no Xayah buff, no Jarvan buff, anything like that, obviously. Ahri gets a small damage buff. If you want to 3-star your Ahri, she should be worth it. Annie gets a small damage and shield buff. This is one of the bigger ones, but 3-star Annie should be good. So cool. Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank is a fun champion, but why on earth would you ever 3-star this champion? It's just never worth. So we buffed his spell damage. So if you get a 3-star Blitzcrank, he pulls in hard, and it hits hard. That can one-shot certain units if you do it right. So 3-star Blitzcrank should be exciting. And then Darius. 3-star Darius, it'll still have the same problems it has right now. It'll still get CC'd by the Nikos and the Nautiluses. But 3-star Darius gets to live that fantasy a bit. And again, we're trying to open up more strategies so it's not just always fast 8. Fast 8, fast 9. So gives you some more options. Lucian. Lucian's another interesting one because, again, we know 750 is insanely overpowered. We've seen it on PBE. We know 550 didn't really move the needle. So we're going to buff it up a little bit, 625. If you 3-star your Lucian, cool. He should be doing a lot of damage. He should be fun. Same with Mordekaiser. 3-star Mordekaiser is something most people don't often go for. And when they do, it's like, it's okay. It's okay. So it gets to be a little bit more exciting. Sweet. Nautilus. Nautilus, same thing. Gets to be a little more exciting. Gets to be a bigger stun. Cool. Again, this is just 3-star Nautilus. So whoever 3-stars their Nautilus, but if you do, should be worth. Okay, and then Shen. Let's talk about Shen. This one probably, I'll be honest, this one's probably not going to ship. If I had to go back and change one thing, this is probably not going to ship. I could see this getting pulled from the patch notes, so just be aware of that. With Blademaster doing as well as it does, people are often hitting the Shen for both the Xayah and the Yi variations. So this one's probably going to get pulled. Just calling it now. All right, 3 costs. Ezreal. Why on God's earth would you ever 3-star an Ezreal right now? Well, the answer is because now he'll chunk big AoEs for 800 damage. And keep in mind, his spell scaling is 100, 150, 800 now. So Ezreal gets to be a chunk. Rumble. Yes, everyone's going to be like, what? Barbecue Rumble? Oh my God. But the reality is, Barbecue Rumble should be good. Investing in a 3-star carry like this, it should be good. So he gets a small buff. So if you want to run that 3-star Rumble, good. Cool. That should be a cool new build. Happy days. Vi, same thing. If you 3-star Vi, it should hit hard. It's not. It's gonna. And Vayne. Vayne is actually one of the few carries that we're buffing, but 3-star Vayne is just a disappointment. And 3-star Vayne should be a good unit. If you can 3-star your Vayne, this thing should be scary, right? 3-star Vayne should be scarier than 2-star Jhin. So 3-star Vayne, cool. Enjoy. So, and then lastly in the 4 and 5 cost, Gnar. Small buff for Gnar. If he transforms, gets even more health at 3-star. He's just kind of underperforming at 3-star a bit, so cool. Riven, same thing. Riven 3-star hasn't quite been living up to expectations. So Riven just gets kind of a buff to every number. Her spell damage will be harder, bigger shield, bigger damage. Congrats, Riven. And then Janna. If you manage to 3-star Janna, she's already giving 500% attack speed, but the CC just doesn't feel right, so we gave it a small buff from 1.5 seconds to 8 seconds. Small buff. Shouldn't matter, you know. But again, if you hit a 3-star 5 cost, you should kind of be winning the game. So we made it match Lulu's 8 second stun duration, so yeah. So that was goal 2. Goal 3 was taking a bunch of items that aren't being built right now. Like, if you see these items, you're just like, oh, God, I'd never touch this in a million years. And buffing them up so that they're actually open options. So, Hand of Justice. This is probably the most controversial one. And if anything shifts the meta, I could see it being this. Hand of Justice, if you get the damage roll, 50% damage, you're like, sweet, happy days. If you get the healing roll, you're like, don't care. So we changed it. 50% Omnivamp. Now, to give you an idea, this is better than Bloodthirster and better than Gunblade combined into one. So that's cool if you get that roll. So if you're a champion that is happy with the damage or the healing, this should be a good item. This should be a cool item to build. This should open up more people to be, using this item. I'll say I've seen most success with this item on the mech. I think the mech makes great use of the Omnivamp. I could see Yi using this. I could see this being a slight Yi buff. But again, should open some cool new options. So, yeah. Gunblade. Gunblade's another item that, we keep buffing it. It's at 45% stealing right now. And it's okay. It's okay on a few people, but it's not great. So we're giving it a small buff. And what this does is, if you're at full health and you get the healing, and you go over full health, you can go up to an extra 400 HP shield. So, it doesn't increase the healing so much. It's not like you're going to go infinite even more, but it does allow you to, hey, I'm going to get an extra 400 shield buffer on my backline, or something like that. So, it'll be interesting to see if this plays out. To be honest, from what I've played so far on Gunblade, it's not changing things drastically, so much as it's just a nice buff to the item. So, we'll see. Locket of the Iron Solari. This item is good. It's not a bad item. It's just an item that's not something you're excited to build. And it's probably not going to change. But we wanted to give it a small buff just to make it a little bit better when you end up with it. So it gets 25 extra on the 2 and 3 star variation. So it is what it is. If you need extra HP for your front line or your back line to stop those infiltrators, there you go. Hurricane. Very small buff to Hurricane. Again, this is one of those cloak items are kind of struggling a bit. The item isn't really great. But again, this is another Yi can use this really well. He's basically the only person he's using this item really well. So it gets a very small buff. Now everyone going oh my god, Yi's going to use this item. What does this do for Yi? It makes his bolt do an extra 4 damage. Woo! So I don't think it's going to drastically change Yi, but we should definitely keep an eye on that. So, Static Shiv. So this is an interesting one. Static Shiv has this problem right now where it's really good early. Honestly, if you lock this item early on a Xayah, a Cog, whatever, you're probably win streaking. You're probably win streaking till 3-3, 3-5, and then the item gets shoved off a cliff and never to be seen again. And because of that, and because it's so early game focused, most people don't build it. So we wanted to come up with a way to make the item better in the late game without buffing its early game. The way we did that was pretty clever. Props to Ananda who came up with this. Anytime the bolt hits somebody who has a shield on them or is CC'd, it does an additional 85 damage true damage. So this is good for countering protectors. This is good if you've got a non-list in your comp. If you've got CC making or you're up against shielded units, this is a good item. The first game on PvE today, we demonstrated that this thing can wreck. And this is also good because protectors right now are kind of the S tier frontline. So having something that can deal with them in a good way is good. And this is kind of a subtle buff to Battlecast too, because Kog'Maw can use this item well. So should be interesting to see how this goes. I'll be interested to see how this. Be interested to see if this becomes a build. My bet is that it still won't, but we'll see. Finally, Swordbreaker. Let's be real. Swordbreaker, not a great item. Nobody likes it. Even when you get it for free, I could say, hey, here's a free Swordbreaker to start the game, and you're like, This item is not long for this world. I do not expect this item to exist in set 4. But we did want to give it some love so that it's not quite as bad of a punishment right now. And honestly, in the world where blasters somehow use this to become meta, that's okay. So cool. Swordbreaker gets a small buff. So there you go. So again, those were our 3 big goals. Fix the chase traits, fix the 3-star units you never 3-star, and buff some items that you normally don't use. If you look at all this and you're like, how is the meta going to shift? Not a ton. Maybe Hodge changes things a little. Maybe. So that's our goal, is to like just open up some new options, not get rid of a bunch of new ones. So, but we will definitely be keeping a close eye on this. I will say, if something goes wrong, you can expect hotfix or B-patch very quickly, because again, we are in the point where we're in the competitive season, so we want to make sure none of this goes wrong. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on this. And then let's talk about the actual balance changes. So, on the trait side, Chrono 4, 6, and 8. Those aren't real traits. No one cares. They basically may as well not exist right now on live. Let's fix that. So, Chrono 4, 6, and 8 get buffed. Will this make Chrono meta? Probably not. Maybe a little. If it adds new builds, cool. That's great. So, this will probably be the last time Chrono gets buffed. So yeah, Chrono Ash, Chrono Xerath. We'll see if people come up with some new builds. But yeah, Chrono gets a buff. Cool. Infiltrator. This is not a buff or a nerf. This is just a small quality of life thing. Right now, if you have your infiltrators on the front line, they actually reach the back line a little quicker because the jump time is not fixed. So we are making the jump time fixed. So it really does not matter where your infiltrators are placed on the map. They will always land 0.6 seconds later. No big deal. Rebel. Rebel is underperforming just a little bit. Just a little bit. So we wanted to be careful and not overbuff Rebel. Certainly 3 Rebel, by the way, does not need a buff, right? Yi's doing just fine with it. Jinx is doing just fine with it. We ain't touching 3 Rebel. So 6 Rebel, though, it is hard to commit to 6 Rebel. So, very small buff to the shield. 210 goes to 225. So 6 Rebels get to survive a little longer. No buff to the damage. And then the 9 Rebel we already talked about earlier. But yeah, very tiny buff here. Space Pirate. Space Pirate is continuing to struggle. What's interesting, though, is if you look at the data, Space Pirate has a really, really low top 4 rate and a really, really high top 1 rate. If you manage to get it going, it is strong. So we want to incentivize that just a little bit, where it's like, I finally hit that 4 Space Pirate build, and those items start raining much sooner. So small buff to Space Pirate should give them more items. Probably still won't be a meta build, but should still be a fun build if you can pull it off. And lastly is Vanguard. This is almost a placebo nerf, but still worth talking about. 6 Vanguard, for how easy it is to get access to, is a little strong. Just a little. So we're going to let that go down to 900 instead of 1,000. Honestly, it'll still do exactly what it does, just a little bit less effectively. So there you go. Those are the trait changes. Now, let's talk about champions. Now, normally I have a page for 1 cost, a page for 2 cost, a page for 3 cost, because there's always a lot of changes. Again, we're trying to keep the balance relatively light here. So, look at this. 1, 2, and 3 cost all on the same page. Fiora. Fiora has been a trait bot for the whole set. Let's be real. So, she gets a small HP buff. Woo! Zed. Zed is fine. Zed is good in Blade Master for sure. But Zed's not really serving his purpose. The problem is, if Zed's not good in a Jhin meta, we've done something wrong. Right? Because Zed's job is to jump back, hit that Jhin 3 times, and steal a bunch of his AD. And so he'll get to steal a little bit more AD at 2 and 3 star. So, cool. Bard. If you get an early Bard, you are set. Early Bard, be real strong. So, we are nerfing Bard 1. If you get Bard 2, cool, enjoy your Bard. But Bard 1 gets nerfed, and this nerf does two things. One, it makes him take one extra auto attack to generate a meep, so that'll slow him down a bit. And two, means AP items early on him are not as big a scale. So it'll be much harder to get that Bard going. So yeah. Now, I'm kind of glancing over at my Twitch chat right now, but Twitch chat's going, oh my god, Blade Master Yi is going to be so broken. Look, that's why I said these are subject to change. I am fully expecting us to do a Yi 3 nerf before this also ships out. So, while this is not in the patch rundown yet, with the results we're seeing, the data we're seeing, I fully expect to see a Yi 3 nerf in the patch as well. So, calling that out now. All right, 4 and 5 cost changes. Fizz. Fizz is still overperforming a little bit, but it's the same kind of thing where we're happy with him where he is at 2-star. If you get a 2-star Fizz and you commit to him in your comp, he's doing exactly what we want him to do. But it's a little too good to just throw in a 1-star Fizz and be like, ta-da, your whole team is disrupted. So we're just nerfing the 1-star Fizz. Just the 1-star Fizz. So again, it's not quite the free backline disruption, but it is the, if you commit to it, enjoy. I'm going to talk about Jhin and Teemo at the same time. When we talk about balance, and we look at all the comps, the balance is really good, but there is one comp that is overperforming very slightly. Astro Sniper. Astro Sniper is, and actually to a smaller extent, the Jhin Sniper with the 4 Dark Star variations. These comps are overperforming just a little bit, so we wanted to try to nerf it in the smallest possible way to just nudge it down to where these comps are still going to be good, but just a little less good. So, minus 0.05 attack speed on both Jhin and Teemo was the tactic we'd use to do that. I still imagine these comps to be quite good. This is not going to remove them from the meta. This is just going to nudge them down a little bit. That's it. Jinx. Okay, let's talk about Jinx. Jinx has been a roller coaster. I'm not even going to lie. If you go back and look at your patch notes, it's like nerf, nerf, buff, nerf, nerf, buff, buff, nerf, buff. And I admit, that sucks. That sucks. But again, Jinx has so many levers that every lever can mean a very different thing, right? Where it's if her rockets are too big, once she turns on, she snowballs too hard. If her AD is too low, she can never snowball. If her attack speed is too high, it's too easy to apply red buff and get that snowball. She has a lot of levers, and so we've struggled to get this perfect. And what we're seeing on live right now is Jinx comps can succeed. We've seen them win tournament games. We've seen them do well. But the reality is, if you look at the data right now, she is the worst 4 cost by a significant margin. A very large margin. We're talking 3 to 4% lower than the next highest. So, she's not good. But again, we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past and just have her become the dominant thing again. So we're doing this in the smallest possible way here. 5 AD. Plus, you know me, I can't pass up a good meme. So a 5 AD buff is exactly what the internet needs to meme on me. So this should nudge her a little bit forward. So we'll see what this does. And again, the hope here is Jinx at the bottom a bit, Astro at the top a little bit, should sandwich it in, and not shift the meta into a bad spot. Finally, Gangplank. Gangplank isn't a real champion right now. Most people don't play him. I think he's only played in mech, and he's basically only played in mech if you 2-star him, and he's basically a demolitionist bot. He's just not good. So the idea with this buff is he gets 100 more spell damage on his spell. And the idea here is, because his base damage is higher now, you won't need to itemize him with offense items as much to make it worth. So I expect to see things like Warmog's QS or GA QS so that he can get that cast off and still be worth it. And that base AD will actually be worth it. Whereas right now on live, if you try to do that itemization, your spell's going to tickle. So hopefully this should be the right nudge with GP. But again, we have to be really careful because obviously with GP spell, If we go too far, late game turns into the GP meta and he blows up your whole team. So someone in chat is saying 3 buffs to Space Pirates at once. Yes, Space Pirate is now going to be the top tier comp. You caught me because, again, we count buffs without looking at the degree of them. Cool. Last change. If you missed it on Twitter, new feature. If you right-click any item or on mobile tap and hold any item for a second, this pops up. This should be really cool for new players. This should allow them to be able to check out what the items do. For everyone saying finally, yeah, you're right. But props to Alicia on our team who got this out, really pushed hard for this to get out. I'm glad this feature's coming. And yeah, it's really cool because, like, as you can see here in the second screenshot, it even shows you what you can build. So you can just be like, oh, my right click is Bramble Red Buff Titan. What do I want to do? Cool. This is sick. Glad to see this coming. After 2 years. Game's only been out a year. But cool, after 2 years. Time travel. So yeah, glad to see this coming. This is the final change. So that is it for the patch. Again, I expect to see that Shin buff pulled and probably a Yi buff get added before the actual patch notes. Might be some other changes. We'll see. Keep an eye on the patch notes on Tuesday. I will, as always, tweet out what is the difference. Yeah. And again, our goal here is not a major meta shift, but simply to open up more comps. I expect Astro Sniper to be really good still. I expect Six Blade Master to be really good still. I expect everything else. Sorry, Yi nerf. Sorry, Yi nerf. Leave me alone. I'm getting old. Yeah, I expect everything to still be good. We are not trying to shift the meta. And I expect our responsiveness, if something goes wrong, if somehow Hodge Mech becomes the, like, dominant comp, we will get in there and we will fix it quick. But yeah, again, we're in a good state. We don't want to ruin that good state, so keep an eye on that. All right, that's going to do it for this time. That's the patch rundown. This comes out on Wednesday. If you have any thoughts, hit me up later. As always, that's going to do it for now. Good luck with your climb. Take it easy.